In March this year, 2024, I reported on the 2023 trial and special hearings in regards to sexual offences against boys over 30 years ago that were committed by identical twins Richard and Stephen Mateer. I discussed the differences between a trial and special hearing in that same March report. Stephen had a special hearing instead of a trial due to his dementia that had resulted in cognitive decline. In another video in March, I reported on their sentence hearing that occurred on the 2nd of February this year. During this sentence hearing, concerns were raised that Richard was also showing signs of cognitive decline indicative of the beginnings of dementia as well. Consequently, Judge Peter McGrath ordered a neurological assessment for Richard and delayed his sentencing until after that assessment had occurred. That has now occurred, and he was recently sentenced on the 6th of September 2024. But before I discuss this, I will mention that since Stephen was sentenced on the 19th of March, Richard has had 7 court hearings for which I found no media reports. Only 2 relate to the case for which he was tried last year, these being on the 2nd of May and the 16th of May. The other 5 are related to what appears to be a mysterious new case against Richard, which I also mentioned in my video on the 19th of March sentence hearing. I will discuss this further towards the end of this video. But first, I identified 2 media reports about Richard's sentence hearing on the 6th of September. They were in the Newcastle Herald and the Daily Telegraph's Newcastle News. However, I will only cover the Newcastle Herald report on the 7th of September 2024, as the Daily Telegraph's Newcastle News had little to add to the Newcastle Herald article. The report by Madeline Link and Sam Rigney begins with the headline, Twins, 7-year sentence for historical child sexual abuse. One of 2 twin brothers who sexually assaulted 2 boys in Lake Macquarie more than 30 years ago will be eligible for parole in November 2026. Now, that's assuming that this mysterious case has been resolved by then. I expect it probably would be. Or he has been convicted of whatever this mysterious new case is and has to spend more time in jail. Okay, so Richard Mateer was handed an aggregate sentence of 7 years in the Newcastle District Court yesterday. His sentence was backdated to the date of his arrest in November 2021, with a non-parole period of 5 years. So that gives you the November 2026. Mateer and his brother Stephen, 71, were both found to have committed sexual and indecent assaults against 2 young boys between 1989 and 1993. The Newcastle Herald has previously reported that the pair were suffering from signs of cognitive deterioration. Stephen Mateer was found unfit to stand trial on the 45 charges against him due to dementia, and the pair faced a concurrent special hearing and judge-alone trial in Newcastle District Court last year. So in one of those previous videos about the trial and special hearing, I did go into a fair bit of detail about what the special hearing was and how that would end up with his conviction and how he'd spend his time once convicted. In February, Judge Peter McGrath was told Richard Mateer was now showing the early signs of cognitive deterioration and would need to be assessed by a neuropsychologist before he could be sentenced. Those proceedings concluded with Judge Peter McGrath making qualified findings of guilt, that's for Stephen Mateer, in relation to all but 3 of the charges against Stephen Mateer, although 8 were not in the aggravated circumstances in which the charges were put to the court. So I went into all that in the previous video. Richard Mateer was found guilty of all 8 counts against him in relation to the abuse of 1 boy. At sentencing yesterday, Judge McGrath ordered that a copy of a report from Richard Mateer's neuropsychologist be given to Justice Health to help them manage his remaining time in custody. So it seems he has some effects from his cognitive decline that were obvious in that report. Richard Mateer was not given any discount on his sentence. Now, I did discuss that a little in the previous video on the Mateer's sentencing, but briefly, a sentence discount, from my understanding, would be a situation where the sentence is reduced due to mitigating circumstances, or if they pleaded guilty, so they pleaded not guilty, so wouldn't be eligible there, or if cognitive decline may have negated the possibility to do so. Now, since the judge didn't give a discount, it implies there were no mitigating circumstances that were identified, and that the judge considered that even with the cognitive decline, I guess it would depend on the level of that as well, that it didn't affect either Richard's ability to give any mitigating circumstances, or that it was unlikely that there would have been any anyway, which I kind of think might be the case. So we then go on. In February, one of the pair's victims read an emotional victim impact statement to the twins, telling them he was only an innocent child at the time of the offences. A child who hoped for a happy, fulfilled future of holidays, fun, health, education, work and family, he said. Unfortunately for me, none of those came about. Instead, by the actions of an adult, I was denied these positive aspects of life, and I learned pain, fear, anxiety, violence, and depravity. Stephen Mateer preyed on the 2 boys aged between 12 and 14 in the Lake Macquarie area from the late 1980s to the early 1990s. On one occasion, the brothers touched the genitals of one of the boys before inciting him to manually stimulate them. Richard Mateer so that's the one who's being sentenced now, then raped the child. On another occasion, Stephen Mattia incited the children to touch each other. He had met the boys through the Belmont pizza shop where he worked. So, not very nice. So we have that Richard Mattia's sentence is backdated to November 2021. So even if he serves his full sentence, he could still be released in November 2028. But if he successfully gets parole after 5 years, he would be released in November 2026, which is just over 2 years' time. However, there appears to be some mysterious new charges that have appeared as cases for hearings in court since early this year. And I don't know what they are, but I would assume if proven, he could spend more time in jail and be kept out of society for longer. So, yes, hopefully that would be the case. Now, the first 2 hearings for this new case were brief status committal hearings on the 3rd of April and the 1st of May. Now, committal hearings are basically hearings where the judge considers if there's enough evidence for the case to go to trial. The next hearing was on the 3rd of July 2024, and there was actually 2 hearings for him on that date for the same case. The first was listed as charge certification committal, and my understanding of this is basically it's where the charges are listed that are intended to be taken to trial. The other court hearing that was listed on that same date was mention police. From my reading, this means New South Wales Police have brought those charges, or might just be one charge, against him, and he may be asked to plead guilty or not guilty, or he could request that there be an adjournment to a later date, and usually the reason for that would be is so he can get legal advice. The next hearing after that 3rd of July hearing was on the 28th of August 2024, and it was listed as further mention committal, and was probably just another hearing to clarify some issues. In either case, I don't think there was anything of significance that the media were interested in. Now, the next hearing on this case will be on the 26th of September 2024 and is listed as an arraignment, which, if you watch my last video on Warren McCorriston, you might remember what that is, but basically it's where the charges are formally read to Richard Mattia, and he'll be asked to either plead guilty or not guilty. If he pleads not guilty to any of the charges, or if it's just one charge, but any one charge or all of the charges, then he will have to go to trial on the charges he's pleaded not guilty for. So I expect that is not the last we have heard of Richard Mateer in the court system, and that I will soon have more to add. But I will leave it there for this video. I hope you found it interesting and informative and would like to see more of my videos. And if so, please subscribe and click on the bell to be notified when I upload them. And if you'd like to support me to make more of those videos, you can do so at Patreon. I'm David A. Elliott. Have a good one and see you around like a risol.